Welcome, welcome one and all to a joint Schism NEWSHOUND podcasty thingy majiggy about Pottinger. This is the second part. This is the Pottinger Supremacy, the road to the takedown of Jeffrey Epstein. And I'm, of course, here with Rhys and Adam. Indeed. Let's go.
How you doing?
Welcome back.
We're doing great. We're
Good.
very ready to get stuck into part two.
Yeah, we've got some juicy stuff on Pottinger from part one, and we are ready to straight into part two.
I'm going to take off the one set of sunglasses then and put on, these aren't sunglasses, these are my real glasses. These are the things that allow me to do research in this other world. Because, yeah, we're going to go through today, and I've got it on the side of the screen. We're going to go straight in to the Pottinger Supremacy, the second part of this Pottinger series. And the first part of this show between the two of us was really good. I really liked how we did it. I hope we get the same flow this time. But on this occasion, I am going to let everybody see like the article sitting there next to us. That's going to be used as notes. As sometimes it's going to be easier for me to find the quotes from the article rather than the source material, which will still be shown to you and where you can find it and is still within the article. But this is really important. I mean, where were we? We've gone through so much. We had discovered who Stanley Pottinger was. We learned about his father, John Pottinger, who was an insurance man who died at the age of 58.
Bit on his mad brother as well, you know.
Yeah, David Forbes Pottinger, who faked his own disappearance, and Stanley Pottinger stood on the steps of his house and called all of the girls that said he was actually sleeping with an underage babysitter and had trafficked her across state lines for sex. He called them all a liar, which would be awkward now if he did the same, because of course he is, and for people who don't know, John Stanley Pottinger is the representative, one of the legal representatives for the main group of Epstein victims. So this guy is a really important figure in the current case. In the case that's being, there's another case that's happening. It's the, I suppose some people would call it the big money case. You know, a lot of these victims, and there are a lot of victims of Epstein. If in this series I am to come across someone who claims they were a victim and isn't a victim, that does not mean in any way that this series means to say that all of Epstein's victims are not victims. Epstein was a prolific paedophile. We talked about that last time. We talked about what type of grade, standard sort of like category he would fit into if he was being profiled by the FBI or another legal
Hall of Fame
agency.
Let's say Hall of Fame, really.
Yeah, he is. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a preferential sadistic paedophile. But he was also, he had this ritual routine. It was like 99.9% of the stories the victims told were exactly the same. They were groomed, attracted by either a friend or one of Epstein's colleagues. And they would bring them to Epstein. Often, like, for instance, the stories have been told of Ghislaine Maxwell. She'd take these girls to give this billionaire massage, and they'd walk into the massage room, and then Ghislaine Maxwell will be stopping them from leaving. Ghislaine Maxwell will be standing by the door, and there's Jeffrey Epstein revealing himself naked and pulling away the towel, and then this young teenage girl, probably between the age of 14 and 17 usually, would show fear, would not be able to escape, and then would have to start doing whatever she's doing. You know, a lot of these girls would go into an automatic mode. That's how abuse works. They go into an automatic mode, and that's what they use to keep these girls in the cycle. And of course, after doing it a few times and getting paid, then soon you're like, you know, it's a matter of fact. Abuse becomes matter of fact, and that's what happened to a lot of these girls. So that was the offending pattern of Jeffrey Epstein. Majority of the girls were not trafficked. The majority of the girls Epstein targeted and Epstein abused, and were abused through Epstein's paedophilic network, which was massive. A lot of them, and the idea of trafficking is conflated by the fact that a lot of the girls who worked for him, and a lot of the select few girls that he would take around on the planes, that classes as trafficking across borders. And he obviously sold some girls off to other people, and there was obviously another network doing something along those lines, which is hard to kind of work out, that was very linked with people like this guy what's his XG, the guy who's the head of XG in China, and of course Jean-Luc Brunel and other people who were involved in Epstein's criminal network. But the majority of the girls who were abused by Epstein's network were abused by Epstein himself, because he was seeing 2 to 3 girls a day, and so a lot of these girls had repeated experiences. This series, the Takedown, the Road to the Takedown of Jeffrey Epstein, and the Pottinger series, is going to lead to a place where there are going to have to be awkward questions asked, because the evidence leads us to that place. But we're in the second part of that now, and we're going to start to see how Pottinger and Epstein first meet and first become connected, because J. Stanley Pottinger, this representative of the victims against Jeffrey Epstein, met Jeffrey Epstein back just after where the last article left off, which was about 1977. We were 1976. We got the assassination of Orlando Letelier outside the embassy in Washington, D.C. They go to work. Pottinger and others go to work at being able to get the best out of it for the CIA, and in doing so, they managed to get him, Eugene Proper, and George Bush collaborate at the CIA headquarters with an idea of allowing the CIA domestic surveillance of U.S. citizens, in return for their help in wrapping up the assassination of Orlando Letelier. So in that sense, it was such a positive for the CIA that in the future, the CIA could commit such operations, get such a consequence, and they're just being rewarded for their operations. So it's a really terrible thing, and Pottinger was central to that. So that's where we kind of left off, and he was finishing up. You will see this. Here we go. You can see this in front of you. Presidential Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum, and each president has their own presidential library and museum, and the people who worked under them are all linked to this. And so Stanley Pottinger was, they put the J. Stanley Pottinger papers. What's really interesting is the J. Stanley Pottinger papers start in 1968, but he doesn't actually enter government till 1969. And they end in 1981, but he leaves government in 1977. So there's a load of papers on either side that suggest he was still working with inside government. I am going to go into a lot of this.
You kind of touched on this with the whole Jimmy Carter administration, by the way they let him to stay on in 77.
This is where we're going to get to. Let's do a brief rundown for those who are just catching, because this is the second episode. It's probably a good idea to go watch the first episode. It's a good, it's a 2-hour long piece that'll explain everything that goes from when J. Stanley Pottinger is born in Dayton, Ohio in 1940. He becomes a Harvard graduate in 1962. There's a lot of stuff in between that, and becomes a graduate at Harvard Law School. Remember, 1962 is the year his brother David Forbes Pottinger fakes his own disappearance, and then he works between apparently 1965 and 1969. He's working for 4 years as general counsel for Broad, Currie, Schultz in San Francisco in California. But it's got to be noted, really got to be noted, that that he apparently did one case throughout that entire time. So he's there for 4 years, and he does one case. That doesn't make sense. Something's wrong with that. And then in 1969 is when he first gets brought into government. He's brought in as a consultant. So, like I say, the papers go from 1968 to 1981, but he's brought in as a consultant in 1969 for the first time into government. And he's brought into the Department of Health, Education and Welfare. That's where he'll be staying until he moves to the Department of Justice. The Justice Department is where he is post 1973. And I think he's partly moved there to start with the cover-up of Watergate. I think that's why they move him over in 1973. They're like, okay, Watergate is going full swing. We need our guy over there doing this because this is our guy. So 1970 to 1973, he's in a newly created office. He takes over a newly created office of civil rights that had been led initially by Leon Panetta, but Leon Panetta had gone too fast for the Nixon administration, and so they installed J. Stanley Pottinger in instead, and he works there between 1970 and 1973, and then he goes over to the Department of Justice, where he's Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Division. Under there, I mean, that's where loads of events happen, and he becomes central to a lot of events during his time as a Justice Department, major events, including, like I said in the first part, like writing report that saw FBI people didn't do anything wrong in Watergate. So he studied 60 cases, I think it was, 8,000 files, found nothing wrong. Yeah, other people find things wrong. Same with Martin Luther King and his assassination and the attempt to smear him. Well, J. Stanley Pottinger looked at all the evidence officially for the Department of Justice and said no conspiracy to be found. The same with Kent State Massacre, even though that later on they'd find evidence that there may have been orders to fire, and it was believed that there was probably orders to fire at the time. He would find no conspiracy, and this became the thing that Stanley Pottinger did so well. So for the people who are, that's a brief catch up to where we've been so far. We ended up in 1976.
His specialist talent is not finding stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the man you want to go to not find the answers.
Yeah. I mean, he'd have a trouble with the Where's Wally book, wouldn't he?
He would never find him. He would just be like, he's not there. He's not in the book.
Which is
every page.
It makes like Pottinger's identity. The Pottinger identity makes that make a lot more sense, because it's trying to work out who Pottinger claims to be is by what he doesn't find and what he doesn't do and what he covers up and all of these nefarious, he's a real fixer. He's a real bagman. He's like very similar to Epstein, but in slightly different fields. Like, he's the one everybody goes to. They work out that he's the man who can get things done. But we're going to
like the kind of Mr. Cleanup. Like the Mr. Clean. Is it in Pulp Fiction where they ring Mr. Clean?
Yeah.
After the crime scene, the guy just goes there and he's like,
Winston Wolfe.
Do what I say.
Yes.
Yeah. I like the idea that this guy is just like a cleanup guy, basically. He goes in and then he just comes out. Nothing to see here.
There is no bigger like controversy than Watergate. All the Weather Underground stuff. The Wounded Knee, we went through a bit about the standoff at Wounded Knee. They harassed all of the people who protest against Wounded Knee for 2 years constantly afterwards, arresting them without charges and on false charges. All the cases fell apart. They just targeting people in really that was J. Stanley Pottinger. That's what he was doing. He was a gangster. He was a mafia. The Nixon Justice Department under Nixon was very much like gangster, and that continued under Ford, because Ford was really a CIA man too. He was installed in. He was a friend of all the boys. It was only when Carter comes round that they were like, oh, we can't get away with as much now because the Democrats are in. and they do different type of crime. Democrats and Republicans commit different types of crimes, it seems. That's what it seems from an observer. But we got to get to 1977. That's where we left off. We left Pottinger in 1977, and he was, as you see here, special assistant to the Attorney General, and that was so he could finish writing, clearing Watergate up for everybody, so everybody knew there was no conspiracy found, and the FBI didn't do much wrong, and everything's fine. What? Don't look. Remember, he's the guy who says to, like, when he's about to admit that he was deep throat or whatever, deep voice, deep whatever, deep nonsense. He was the anonymous source behind the a lot of the leaks about the controversy. Well, he managed to say, in court, you've just admitted it, but let's take it back from the record and we'll be quiet if you want. Let's cover it up, let's be quiet. Shh. That's Stanley Pottinger. He knows when you should be quiet and when you shouldn't be quiet. And so there, so we're going to catch up. Here we go. We're going to go. Let's look at what we're going to look at, because we're not going to go to, author and stuff. We're going to go up to here to 1987. What's on record? We'll do this on the third one. On the third one, we'll go from 1990 onwards, yeah? And it will be blowing your mind. It'll be from about 1987 onwards, but I like to say 1990 because that's where the action starts. That's where the adventure begins in the third part, really.
Well, I see Rockefeller there, and I'm like,
Yeah. Can you trust him? No, you can't. He's in with all of the boys. So you can see what he did part of career. Pottinger, 1977, 1981, he's attorney in Washington, D.C. 1987, he's apparently an investment banker. Bullshit! That's bullshit. I call bullshit on you, Pottinger. 1987, he's a trustee, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. 1987, United Nations Association Advisory Committee for Multilateral Projects, which I mentioned in the first one. I've not been able to find anything about that. That sounds like a spook creation. 1987, consultant for the Rockefeller Foundation. Lots in 1987 of dodgy stuff. And then, of course, the virtue signaling director, National Alliance for Breast Cancer Organizations, NABCO, not to be mixed up with NAMBLA. And then afterwards, he's president of Bandstorm Books, and then he's an author, best-selling author, Stanley Pottinger. So let's go through it. Let's do this. And this is when he left. He went and worked for this company when he left government. So the second part is really going to be Pottinger. He's left government. He's been covering up stuff for the state. He's been doing all of the mafioso style work within government. Now he's basically going to slip into doing much more. First of all, compliance, and then basically espionage, while keeping the front that he's a lawyer. And some of this will sound Godfather-esque, where, the lawyer and the Godfather sitting around and they all know what everybody does and they all know what they do. But here we are in the Divisions of Corporations, the official state of Florida website. And this is Troy made in Loveland. So before Pottinger, there was Loveland, and they were before based in Palm Beach. Now, we'll always end up in Palm Beach. It's very strange. And this company was set up officially in 1975 by Joseph Troy, Ronald Malin, and Joseph Loveland Jr. And Troy, lawyer, Ledvid, blah. You can see that he each of the members of these guys were big. I can't remember why that was up, but Loveland was the one who would leave to make way for Pottinger. So Loveland started off created the law firm, and then Troy Malin Loveland, once Loveland went on to become vice president and general counsel of Ramada Inns, would become Pottinger. And in 1984, we can see that Troy Malin Pottinger is actually getting sued by some of the people who originally formed the legal company, because they don't correctly state who owns it and stuff like this. So there's stuff about that company that's interesting. But they center in on certain things. They are extremely interesting in what they target. They target cases about big companies. Jeff Gerth, special to the New York Times. Jeff Gerth, what a name, seems to come up. I mean, you got Irvin Shapiro and you got Al Cox, and just on the side,
Irvin looks evil.
Yeah, he is evil, though, I think.
He's got a bit of a George Soros kind of vibe about him, or the Pope.
Yeah. Business is affected negatively. So there's stuff about the Banking Secrecy Act. There's a lot. What I think this goes into, and what I was looking for there, which I'm not going to stick around on, because of course these things get long. So I'll go on to the next article and explain. Because there you go. That article goes on another page, and it talks about Chemical Bank. And Chemical Bank is at this stage the fourth biggest, I think, bank in America, or the third biggest, or at least when it collapses or gets bought up in 1982. I think it gets bought up by Chase Manhattan, which is David Rockefeller's bank, in 1982. But this is a time of real importance. Now, I've got to explain something, and it's a real obvious thing once you realize the time, but you don't think about it straight away. So you've got all of this banking stuff going on. You've got lots of espionage. You've got lots of banks trying to work out what other banks are doing, financial firms trying to get the skinny on their rivals and stuff. But you've also got something really important. You've got the increase of technology and the change of technology. So technology is being introduced, and it means that all of these companies are having to reform all of their processes and all of their systems. And in doing so, it means they put all of their information in a way that's really easier to collate for tax reasons and for government to investigate. And this
stuff they want to avoid, all this.
So all of this becomes about compliance. It becomes, are they compliant with regulations? When we exchange our paper books and we put it all into computers, we're suddenly putting all of the evidence that can see us go to court into a place where it's easily searchable. And they were realizing, we were managing to carefully hide away our naughty stuff with the previous technology, because we could make books and other things and just pile them up. But as soon as you put that into a different format, then people understand what it means and it goes downhill. So they needed to gain compliance officers, and this is really what Troy Mailing Pottinger ended up being, is the Bank Secrecy Act and other acts, as I talk about in the article, during the 70s and 80s, because the Bank Secrecy Act was put out in the early 70s, but trying to get people to comply with it was hard, because they knew what it meant. As soon as they started admitting to stuff, they were going to end up in court and they were going to have loads of fines, and that's what happened. I mean, this is US after lapse is enforcing Bank Secrecy Act. So the Bank Secrecy Act got put in like 1970 or 1972 or something, and it's only in 1978 that they're saying, okay, we're going to do something about it now. And this is where Pottinger comes involved. You can see what he's under this section saying changes in operation. It's in the New York Times. Sorry about that noise. The stepped-up enforcement effort has had sometimes profound effect on banks and other major financial institutions. Chemical Bank, in the wake of its indictment last year, so led to an indictment, instituted substantive changes in its operation. The bank, sixth largest in the nation, strengthened its auditing and compliance division and hired two former Justice Department officials, Harold R. Tyler Jr., former Deputy Attorney General, and J. Stanley Pottinger, former Assistant Attorney General in charge of Civil Rights Division. In an independent inquiry, the two two men detailed various weaknesses in the bank's monitoring and reporting techniques. As a result, the bank adopted new, tighter procedures. Some banks have complained about the added record-keeping costs incurred as a result of the act, according to Charles Zuver, Legislative Counsel for the American Bankers Association. So you could see how they were coming in. They were coming in and saying, okay, these are all of your problems. These are where legally you're going to be found wanting under the new acts that are coming in. And as you update your files, this puts you in the problem. So this put them in the, like legal firms like this in the driving seat to some extent. Because it meant they were the ones who could employ the people to do the hard work. Because in actual fact, they weren't doing most of the hard work themselves. I think this article might actually say that in actual fact. We're in the Atlanta Constitution. That's a name for a paper, isn't it? Oh, it's actually the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, and it's Sunday, May the 7th, 1978. And it says, firms pay millions to check integrity. In-house probes drain ills and funds. Drain ills and funds. What a weird way to say it. But listen to this. They get to start even say. I mean, all of these old articles get interesting as soon as you get into them. Like Washington. Several years ago, amid accusations it had been bribing foreign government officials, Lockheed Aircraft Corporation began an in-house investigation to determine just how widespread the practice had been. The giant multinational company employed a prestigious New York law firm and well-known accountants who probed for more than a year, uncovering millions of dollars in questionable overseas payments, along with unsettling revelations. So Lockheed Martin, the executives are just discovering this for the first time. We didn't know any of this were happening. We were just going around making this money, and it turns out all our employees are doing the naughtiest things. We would never have done this ourselves. And this is what a lot of this is like. Along with unsettling revelations, Lockheed get another sock in the eye when the investigation was finally completed. A bill for a cool $4 million. The racket. 1980s, law firms come in, say, yeah, we can sort out all your problems, only cost you $4 million, better than the $200 million you're going to have to pay in fines, or something along those lines. You know, it's always going to be a massive amount more. That tab for the 14-month investigation is evidence of what is emerging as a post-Watergate boom industry. Law firms, accountants, and former federal investigators are getting fat fees from corporations trying to come clean to the government and their stockholders. Ultimately, the cost of these probes must either be reflected in lower corporation profits or passed along to consumers in the form of higher prices. One government source who has been closely tracking the upsurge in so-called corporate integrity investigations estimates that fully 1/4 of the nation's Fortune 500 businesses have hired outside law firms or financial detectives in an effort to rid themselves of everything from dishonest executives to infiltration by organized crime. Of course it is. Companies specialized in corporate integrity probes, many of them started by former government lawyers and investigators, have been popping up around the country. So former investigators for the government start up the probes and then become lawyers and the legal teams to then tell you where all the probes are, what all the probes are finding and how to get away with it, but it'll cost you a cool $4 million. Recently, for example, J. Stanley Pottinger.
The cool 4 million as well. I feel like this writer was trying to get down with the kids. A cool 4 million. Yeah. Some fat fees.
Yeah. Fat fees, yeah.
How cool is 4 million? I mean, is it like 10,000 fans cool?
Oh, I don't know. It's turning me on. Sure. 4 million. Can you imagine all of the Ferrero Rocher that you can buy and spread all over? You say, Yeah, anyway, recently, for example, J. Stanley Pottinger, former head of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, formed one such company in Washington with John Olszewski. A hard-nosed former head of the intelligence division of the Internal Revenue Service. So the IRS, the original head of the intelligence division for the IRS, gets together with J. Stanley Pottinger to go and investigate companies and what they're doing wrong for the companies, paid for by the companies at massive fees. I mean, they are raking it in at this point. When Pottinger's law firm is hired to probe a large corporation, he simply contracts with his own company to do the actual investigative legwork. So he's just like making money, and these guys are getting away with loads. And again, they say down here, you notice which started aggressively pursuing improper political contributions during Watergate era and has been since focused on corporate bribes to foreign officials. Now think about this: if what you're finding in all of these cases, that Pottinger and people are going in and they're finding all of these bribes, all of these things that this company has done wrong, and they're telling the company, how much can they then hold over the company in the future? How much do they hold back? How many of those bribes do they use for themselves? And this is really the Nixon era government finding work in organized crime in the banking sector, as the banking sector was being transformed with the use of computers. So it's a very interesting place Pottinger sets himself up in. And this is exciting, isn't it? But I set it up. Yes, okay, this is exciting. I tells you, I got to borrow this for an hour. Give me a second, gentlemen, for this little buzzy boo boo. Look at that. It's the turning circle going around, refreshing a page. Oh, that's sexy stuff. And then
the Titans of Takeover.
The Titans of Takeover. Let me have a look here. That's how.
I'm liking the little page turny thing.
Yeah.
You're actually turning the page.
Yeah, it's pretty sexy. Archive.org is one of the best. If it gets destroyed like they want, it's such a terrible thing. So it will be such a terrible thing. I'm going to read from here and just explain what the next case after that case was for him. With the successful conclusion of the Jewish dentist case. I don't know what that means. What does a Jewish dentist look like? You're not going to answer that question. Flom became a firm believer in waging a broad-based campaign for his client, not merely relying upon legal techniques. It was demonstrated in August 1978 in Occidental Petroleum's takeover bid of Mead Corporation. Mead, represented by Joe Flom, was determined to resist the takeover attempt using maximum publicity against Occidental Petroleum as a major weapon, sensing that a legal strategy could profitably be combined with good public relations. Flom turned to PR specialist Gershon Kext, and the Kext. Let me up. Stop doing this. I don't like this page turn. No. Which way was it now?
You got to zoom out.
No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to zoom out. You cannot make me zoom out. Two men waged a vigorous battle against Occidental Petroleum. Calling in Stanley Pottinger, a Washington attorney, Flom decided to publicize some alleged misconduct on Occidental's part to weaken the company's public image. Included were illegal campaign contributions to re-elect President Nixon, which Pottinger was working. I mean, so dirty. These people are so dirty, though. So Flom's working with Pottinger, and they're releasing Nixon era information. Dirty rotten bastards. Illegal bribes given to foreign officials, and again, this is a different case. Illegal bribes given to foreign officials comes up, and potential liabilities which Occidental subsidiaries Hooker Chemical faced for polluting Love Canal. That sentence. Sorry, I'm gonna have to read this sentence again, because this sentence might actually be the best sentence in the world ever.
It
so
says
here we go.
Hooker Chemical followed by polluting a love canal.
Yeah, wait, let's go back. Included were illegal campaign contributions to re-elect President Nixon, illegal bribes given to foreign officials, and potential liabilities which Occidental's subsidiary, Hooker's Chemical, faced for polluting Love Canal. Hooker Chemical. I don't know what's happening here anymore. I think we may have entered into the Twilight Zone.
He polluted my love canal.
The hooker chemical. Wow. Okay. So anyway, not to get
That's what you
distracted
get when
by
you're
that.
dealing with hookers. You know, they're going to pollute your love canal.
Yeah, you're going to be left with some strong stuff on you.
It's what you get when you're dealing with Stanley Pottinger, I tell you. You'll get some stuff on you if you're not careful.
Think about it. He's kind of a prostitute of sorts for hiring out his services.
Oh, yes, he is. Yes, he is. We'll get to some of those. These actions were considered relevant to the tender offer since Occidental planned to pay Mead stockholders in Occidental stock. The public relations barrage worked. On December the 20th, Occidental withdrew its tender offer. That's its tender offer to take over Mead. Now, really important things. I think this is 1979 that this is happening. And that's December the 20th. This is just before some massive events in the world of Stanley Pottinger and he's working for some real dodgy people. He's gifted. He is a gifted legal expert. He knows how to get the most guilty person out of the most obvious, guilty of the most obvious crime. He knows how to get them all out of it. He knows how to get everybody out of it. But let's go back to the Times machine.
I can only imagine what the case of the Jewish dentist must have been.
Wow, yeah. None of the teeth were kosher. I don't know what that means. I don't know. There's a joke in there somewhere, I'm sure.
The Jewish tooth fairy
The Jewish
steals the money.
What? That's what. Isn't that what
No.
Anyway. No. It is. That's a great. That is actually. It's probably already a joke in a book that you can't buy on British shelves. New York Times. How is Occidental run? And so this is at the time. You read that a bit in the book, give you a bit of an idea of what happened. So 1979. This is February 1979. How is Occidental run? And Judith Miller reports from Washington, February the 12th. The 5-month multi-million-dollar battle successfully waged by Mead Corporation to fend off an attempted acquisition by the Occidental Petroleum Corporation has brought to light information that has touched off federal and state investigations of the business practices of Occidental and its chief executive office, Armand Hammer. Have you ever heard of Armand Hammer before? Armand Hammer is an extremely interesting figure in history. He's extremely rich man, owns a lot of stuff, but one of the things he owns is Occidental Petroleum. Now, around the same times, is also stories that Pottinger tells in other places about Armand Hammer being on his knees in a hotel room while Russians are threatening him and bribing him.
And filling his love canal.
And probably filling his love canal. Armand Hammer is a bit of a dirty one. And it seems to be what happened with this is Armand Hammer and Occidental decided that they were going to beat him up there. Dr. Armand Hammer, sorry. They were going to take over Mead, and Mead, this little company in comparison, a forest products company, it's described as. I don't know what that means. It was like, we don't want to be taken over by you, and they were really hostile about it, so they fought it off, and they used Pottinger and the gang to fend them off, and they did it really successfully, because basically Occidental has loads and loads of skeletons in the closet, and they just went and put skeletons. Something was said in the court, in the actual I'm not sure if it'll be in it's the same article. It's probably all going to be the same article. Yeah, there you go. It's all going to be me in the same article. Ooh, look at these guys.
Here they are.
These guys look good. I don't even know what
The usual
how to
suspect.
about. Yeah. These guys are nothing to do with me. No, that guy's nothing to do with me. And that guy, well, I can't. Obviously, that's quite hard to have saved. Anyway, so what was happening with Pottinger and his legal firm and Mead was really clever. He went in and basically fended off a takeover by a much bigger beast with a guy at the head, Dr. Armand Hammer, who was a very powerful, very well-connected businessman. And it was like, David Goliath type nonsense. But what had been discovered is that if you brought in the right compliance officers and integrity checkers, they would soon discover a lot of things. And that's what he did between about 1978 1979. He started making money doing that, but he was also investing in other things, and that we're going to get into very much so. Let's go down though, because that's not, it's not the exciting stuff. Him doing, it's pretty, you can see what he's doing when in the article itself, you can see what people like Pottinger were doing for companies who they were representing. But it was very much like gangster sort of legal representation. They were going in and they were hard guys. They knew exactly every law. These guys were the top experts. These guys went into government and created laws, tested laws out on really tough cases to create laws, and then used those laws afterwards to make money.
all the loopholes, we created them.
Yeah, completely. And so that was 1979, and then 1980 starts, and there's a new change, right? Listen, this is as you see in the article. The title of it is of this section is Pottinger's central role in the Iran-Contra scandal, illegal arms smuggling, and the October surprise. That's not really a ringing sort of like two-word sort of cool title. It has to be understood. That's really important. These are really massive accusations, because they're all, and they're not even accusations. They're just proven with the documentation. At the time, he got away with it. In a sense, he's still getting away with it, because where loads of others got let off by being pardoned by, I think it was Bush eventually, who pardoned the ones who were Bush Senior, who pardoned the ones who were involved in Iran-Contra. But Pottinger was kind of like hidden away and went into hiding during that period when they were pardoned, so he wasn't on the list. So in a sense, he could potentially, technically, still be brought to trial for illegal arms smuggling now, I suppose. Here you'll see his name come up, Stanley Pottinger, Bethesda in the 8th District. And if you go up, what you discover is it's the candidates running in state primaries that are being advertised in the Baltimore Sun. And so he was a candidate in the 8th District primary for the 1980 election. So this is, of course, the election of Ronald Reagan and George Bush, and they are going to depose Carter and get in, and there's going to be a big event that kind of helps that happen, a surprise in October. It's called the October Surprise, and I wonder if there's any Reagan supporter out there. Now we're going to talk about square jaws later, aren't we? We're going to talk about
another one.
Look at that's Stanley Pottinger. Can you imagine if you found a woman who had a jaw that straight, that flat? Can you imagine if you found, what would that be like? They would lock like two dogs, surely. Amazing. It's beautiful. And here we go. This is in the Daily Times in December 1980. Now, what we haven't gone into yet is
headhunters make odd choices. What, were we not meant to remove the head, sir?
That's someone's balls, Pottinger. Oh yes, we just take balls off nowadays.
It's going to be pretty hard to reattach their head, sir.
Yeah,
not them kind of headhunters.
Well, they took two journalists, I should use quotation marks, to write this article. And it says, Washington. This is December 1980. Now, Pottinger's been doing some naughty things all through 1980 that we're going to discuss to do with Iran-Contra and everything else. So he's obviously being given a little bit of FaceTime here. He's being allowed out in the open. The J. Stanley Pottinger, an erstwhile John Anderson backer, with a yen for Ted Kennedy, has been given a top rating for a sub-cabinet appointment in the Reagan administration, comes naturally for the president-elect's headhunters. So he's being given top rating for a sub-cabinet appointment. It's being said that he'll get in the cabinet under Reagan. He'll get into some sort of position. So he's obviously done good for Reagan's guys. Such subjective considerations were simply excluded by Reagan's headhunters in feeding thousands of names into the computer since November 4th. The operation run by E. Pendleton James, a Los Angeles-based professional headhunter who fits corporate managers into proper niches, is non-political and non-ideological. Stan Pottinger is a classic case. As the Nixon administration's assistant attorney general for civil rights, he fought for a steady federal intervention in favor of racial minorities. That clearly is not in harmony with Reagan's intentions. More startling is Pottinger's political record. For the 1980s presidential campaign, he contributed $1,000 to Senator Edward M. Kennedy, gave $250 to George Bush, and ran unsuccessfully for Maryland delegate to the Republican National Convention, pledged to Republican John Anderson. The one consistency in these eclectic presidential preferences: no support of any kind, anytime for Reagan. No, but
Not a lot of money, was it?
No, but that
quid to George Bush.
Yeah, it's always like that. That's the same with Epstein's. Like Epstein gives $500 to this person, 500 on most. It's just so that they've got a marker. I think it's partially so that Epstein's backers know who to back to, so that he says, I put my $50 there, and that means that or my $250 there, and that means loads of people put loads of really much bigger money on because you've told them to, and so you do it by proxy. Yeah. So it's just make sure you get the right person. I would assume it's something like that. But what's really interesting here is that they say no money at any time for Reagan, but George Bush was running as Reagan's vice president, and George Bush was already, as we know, a friend of Stanley Pottinger. None of this is noted on Pottinger's computer punch card in Reagan's transition office, a card which incredibly gives him #1 tops of 3 ratings. Still, some Reaganite ideologue might restore reality by eventually throwing away Pottinger's card. The same is not true for David Gergen. And then I think they talk about Gergen for a while. But basically,
like throwing away his individual card like he's got one.
Yeah, he's got one. You got
throw it down the drain. Now you have nothing.
Now you have no, but I think that means that now you have to leave. So look at this. A Reagan supporter, is he? No, he's just a straight-jawed man. Yeah, he is at this point he's desperate to get into Reagan's administration, and at the same time he's being given a top rating and he's got a 1 on his card or whatever. They're talking him down like he's got no chance, and in the end he has no chance. So what is going on behind the scenes? Well, he might just be too important for the other things going on at the time, and there were a lot of other things going on at the time.
Like he's giving himself a rating. It's like, that's not how it works. I give my restaurant 5 stars out of 5 stars. What, you? Yeah, I'm giving the rating.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Part of me actually felt sorry for him. I was like, he's thinking I could be capable of so much more, right? I could be in the administration. It's like, no, Pottinger, you're just a fix-it man. That's all you.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of,
We don't need you for anything else.
It's kind of reminding me of like American Psycho with the business cards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously means a lot to him.
Duck egg, raise print.
One, it says, it's there on the card.
The difference is, I think, in Pottinger's world, people might have died. Sorry, I'm both eating grapes and giving the end away to American Psycho. Let's stop doing that. In the end, no boat sank at all. It was all a dream. Right. Where are we? So, we are still in 1980, and we're going to go back a little bit further. In actual fact, we're going to keep going a little bit further back to we're probably in January, February time of 1980, because 1980 was when it all kicks off, really. By this time, Stanley Pottinger has got some relationships going with various people, and it is the beginning of something that's called the Iran-Contra scandal, or Iran-Contra affair. And this is something which is complicated, and I'll be just looking at one part of it to make it simple. Now, I'm not, and when I started researching this, I was not an expert in Iran-Contra. I know a lot more about it now because of the style of research I go through. I have to. I read every single bit of information I can about something, so I kind of get into a little bit of it. I get a bit of expertise. But still, there's a lot of people who can tell you other parts of this, and anybody who knows it will say it's a complex, but same as Watergate. Watergate isn't one thing. It's not just the break-in at the Watergate Hotel or whatnot. That was just where the cards started to fall, and the House of Cards started to fall. So that's just one thing. And we're at the same time that and I'm keeping an eye on Pottinger and his girlfriend at this time for a reason, because we're going to go back in time at the end of this article, and we're going to go a little bit back in time, and we're going to meet Pottinger's girlfriend, which is going to be exciting, a fun affair for all. And we'll have a bit of that like true crime sort of feel about it, and so much information about it, about her links with the CIA, that it's just unreal. I mean, it's hard to pretend to be anything but the CIA when there's many arrows pointing at you, all around you, and you yourself admitted working for the CIA. It's really hard not to then say you're the CIA. In May 30th, 1980, though, Pottinger was having his house refurbished by this guy, and it comes under this Los Angeles Times article. So this isn't like a small news. This is a celebrity decorator, rise and fall of a gambler, and this is about listen to this. When the Algerian government reopened Las Ormes, the embassy here that had once been the home of hostess Pearl Mester and later Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, Grant Gambler was the interior decorator selected to oversee the £200,000 refurbishing. When the White House Chief of Staff, Hamilton Jordan, and his buddies moved into the rented Animal House, where they gave their fraternity-type parties in the early years of the Carter administration, Gambler was the interior decorator who supervised the Art Deco wicker furnishings. Oh, supervised them. He supervised them.
I supervise wicker furnishings.
Well, it doesn't seem to be doing much at the moment, but wicker is known for being tricksy. Gotta keep a close eye.
So that's what the movie Animal House was based on.
Wicker. Like organizing, sorry, what was the term for it? Supervising Art Deco and wicker furnishings.
I'm surprised they use wicker though, because that's quite sticky on the bum cheeks.
Oh,
They're having those sort of parties.
I can't believe you're going to make it sexy now. Can we stop doing this? Right, anyway, let's go on. So Gambler, who went over Jackie Onassis' house and stuck things against the wall, and Billy Baldwin, so probably someone may have died that day. No, that's his brother. Anyway, right. Last week he was convicted in U.S. District Court here of 5 charges, awaiting sentencing. So he ripped off a load of people. Basically, he couldn't keep up with what he had taken loads of money, but he wasn't doing the work. And Two of Gambler's former clients brought charges against him in 1979 for taking their money and not delivering the curtains and custom furniture for which they had contracted. The most irate was former Assistant Attorney General J. Stanley Pottinger, who headed the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. When Pottinger and Gloria Steinem were decorating his new house on Hemsdale Road in Bethesda, Pottinger paid Gambler some $17,000 to redo his living room and family room and convert his dining room into a dual-purpose library. Intelligence arena. Yum, 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 yum.
Let's use Wicker.
Yeah, look. Wicker everywhere.
It's like £250 when he's funding, which political person he wants to, but then like 17,000 to redo his living room
In Wicker.
17,000 in Wicker. The Bush will have to wait for his money. And Reagan could go fuck himself. But then a year went by. Windows were still bare where Pottinger had expected to see $7,000 worth of burgundy wicker. No, of curtains of burgundy and beige, chintz curtains and off-white silk-lined and interlined pinch-pleated traverse draperies hanging according to the contract.
It's the business card from American Psycho.
Yeah.
It's the business card. Pinch pleated, traverse draperies hanging.
I tell you, it's all crazy. So basically, in the end,
how much was the lawsuit for damages? Like how £108,000 in damages? Like what damages? The curtains weren't there. Do you know what sort of retina damage is done to my eyes in the morning? The sun coming in.
In the end, do you know what the Gambler in the end gives him a promissory note. This might be on the next article. Yeah. Court. There you go. Court asks probe. This is going to be a paid for, but this tells us all we need on the top, so I shouldn't go too far. But this tied to Washington Post article saying court asks probe in case of Pottinger decorator. So Pottinger by 1981 was like, all right, there's 5 cases that are against Pottinger, and if you open up this, just to tell people, if you open up this, you can just go put it in archive.org in the Wayback Machine, and it will come up with a version you can read the whole page of. But basically, Pottinger said to this guy, hey, you've got 5-6 cases against you, but I'm going to apply to the court and tell the court that you defrauded me rather than what you did with them, where you just like a bankrupt and you just can't pay. You actually went out your way to defraud me, so I'm going to have a special case. And then the court asked for the probe in the Pottinger, and it's like Pottinger basically gets special treatment because he knows how to traverse the law like anybody knows how to. If you're a fighter, you use all of the blows you can. So of course he does. And he gets a decorator. Eventually, gives him a $5,000 promissory note. And that is how it is agreed. And later on, there's a bit of like talk of whether that was legal, but they said, well, it didn't. We just decided to drop the case. That's not related to the $5,000 promissory note that was given.
There's definitely some irony in the fact that he's the guy that always like draws the curtains on everything. Do you know?
Yeah.
Makes it disappear, and then suddenly he's like, "I've got no curtains." I mean, that must have been his nightmare.
Mm-hmm. It must have turned him into a right wicker man, burning up inside, burning angry. But this is more like it. This is where we're going to get into the juicy stuff. And it is juicy.
Wicker man to broken man.
Yeah, to Broken Man, to Mr. Bull, Gerald V. Bull. Very interesting fella was Gerald Bull. I think it might be Vincent. Maybe his middle name's Vincent. I can't. It might tell us somewhere along here. Anyway, as you see, Stanley Pottinger's name is highlighted on here, mainly because when I've searched, but I've opened it up. But you can see where he is in here. He's actually representing Bull. And Bull is being called a broken man. And this Gerald Bull was portrayed in court Thursday as a broken man, so jolted by his congealing arms to South that he has been diagnosed as suicidal and is under round-the-clock psychiatric care.
So why did they choose such a cheery photo of him?
I know.
Yeah. Hello, I'm suicidal.
He looks like someone just offered him an ice cream.
Yeah, wow.
I'm a broken man.
Maybe
Like
it's,
that 99 flake you're holding.
maybe it's Mossad who implanted the 99 flake eventually, because in 1990, I think it is, he is murdered by the Mossad, this man here, with his nice welcoming smile.
Was it a flake, poison flake inside the 99?
Was the flake just actually polonium or something like that? Or was it just, was it a 99? 99
It changed the
polonium?
flavour of this chocolate a bit.
Yeah, to be sparkly. It's
I mean,
sparkly on
although
my
the
tongue.
picture's in black and white, I can tell that he's got some real red, rosy cheeks.
Yeah,
there.
you can
I
tell,
can
yeah.
see the redness,
I agree.
and he looks like a happy, jolly.
Arms dealer.
Yeah. So this is really interesting, right? Okay. How about I tell you that by the end of this year, Pottinger himself is going to be an arms dealer. Yeah, Pottinger himself is going to be an arms dealer. So let's start off this first half of the year by him representing an arms dealer in court.
I bet he doesn't have that on his business card.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He doesn't have that on his business card. I think I've seen his business card. It was matte finish, shiny bits on it.
It just says Mr. Clean, but to see it, you have to tilt the card because it's a special kind of.
Because it's so
finish.
clean.
It's so clean, yeah.
It's so clean. It's the cleanest cut card that you could possibly find. Oh my God, the font. You would not believe the font. Anyway, so there you go. There's Bull. And his lawyers unsuccessfully asked a federal judge to reduce or suspend a 6-month sentence for Bull, head of a munitions firm in North Troy and Highwater, Quebec, for his role in exporting arms in violation of a United Nations embargo. Now, Bull's a really strange one. He didn't only, most of the actions he took to export arms during this era, he was doing by being pushed by CIA openly, because they wanted basically to get loads of arms into South Africa, and South Africa to attack, I think it's Angola, which was of course on the other side of the border, and it turned communist. So you know what the CIA get like when there's communists around. They get all excited. They bring out their favorite toys, and they get someone. They get someone to put all of their commie-busting weapons into a country. So reviewing a sealed report about Bull's mental and physical condition, the judge said the psychiatric evaluation does indicate suicidal tendencies and tendencies towards self-destruction. Bull is being treated at Silver Hill Foundation in New Canaan, Connecticut, where his new attorney, John Stanley Pottinger of Washington, D.C., described as one of the nation's leading psychiatric treatment facilities. I'll describe the place as one of the leading. That's where he's at. I will continue. Dr. Robert Humphreys of Silver Hill said in the report that Bull should be allowed to stay at the facility for at least 4 weeks and may need to remain there as long as 2 months, given immunity.
What he did with his brother. Just what they did with his brother. Same thing.
Yeah.
No.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't even think about that one. When
Just long it out as much as we can. We have him mentally checked. Just say a load of baloney, and then when it finally gets to trial,
just keep him topped up with 99 flakes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Keep it in, I mean polonium. I mean flakes. I mean polonium. But let's skip down to here though. Because this is Bull only agreed to talk to the grand jury if no questions were put to him that might incriminate him in the eyes of Canadian and Belgian authorities, said Assistant U.S. Attorney Jerome Naderman. That's because originally Bull was arrested in Canada, no charges were filed against him, and then charges were filed in the US, and he had to go to the US to face the charges, and he went to the US to face the charges. Pottinger, former head of Civil Rights Division in the U.S. Justice Department, cited Bull's cooperation with the still active grand jury probe and his mental state as reasons why the sentence should be cut. Dr. Bull has already suffered a severe decline in physical and emotional health precipitated by the sentence pronounced, and there is a strong likelihood that actual incarceration will fix his decline into permanent condition, he said in a written argument. He didn't even say it. Bull's legal difficulties sprang up only after space research shifted from research and development into the business of arms production and sales, Pottinger argued. His failure to adequately supervise and his admitted condemnation. What page are we on? Oh my God, they want me to go through 12 pages. Can you imagine that? Can we get through 12 pages?
You'll be the broken man.
12 pages later?
Yeah.
I don't think I'll make it. I made it. I think I made it. Are we on page 12? Oh, this is exciting. Our Bull called.
Oh, here we go. The broken man
wrongdoing by
returns.
company officials and employees was in connection with those new areas of activities. We won't read all this, but I want to read what parts. Because, Pottinger is speaking a lot in this. Bull has felt a crushing sense of self-betrayal of his own deeply held values of honor and patriotic duty values for which his professional life he has nurtured. For his Pottinger said, incarceration will serve none of the three purposes of sentencing: rehabilitation, deterrence, or retribution. Wow, he's so good in Pottinger. He's just such a wanker. This guy. Oh, super uber Chad. That's what he is.
There's no point in sending him to prison. What good will it do? Think about it.
You think about it, he'll just sit around and play chess. I mean, that's going to do anything for all of the people he murdered. Anyway, no. He called the sentence just and proper, or whatever. Pottinger asked whether Bull's time in the psychiatric facility could count as good time or time served. Ah, cheeky.
What about time he spent on the toilet? Couldn't you add that to the time?
Yeah. What about the time when he was younger and when he got older? And okay, he's free now, and now you're in jail. The judge said that is a matter for the Federal Prisons Bureau, and Pottinger said he will take his plea to that agency. Pottinger also provided the court with background information. This is a long letter that went backwards and forwards and had a response by the sounds of it. Pottinger also provided the court with background information about Bull, which shows he achieved international fame in the field of space-age weaponry development. Space research, and this is where we're getting to understand who this Gerald Bull is, for people who are like, oh, we watch, he's arms dealer, all right, but what do you do? Well, Space Research Corporation, which was his baby, that's what he created, which sold 53 howitzer shells to the white minority regime, the apartheid regime in South Africa, during an arms embargo between 1976 and 1978, is in federal bankruptcy court. One of the unsecured creditors is Burlington Free Press. It doesn't sound very free. Which sounds like they could rain down 53 howitzers on you. You don't feel that that's very free.
53,000.
Yeah, you 53,000. Oh my God, you crazy free press. You I don't think you're even a press. Which submitted questions before the bankruptcy court in an attempt to obtain information about the company's investments in weapons and sales agreements with South Africa. So he's involved with all of this, and of course, this is interesting as well. Some of the other people involved in it, I'm not sure if I noticed this myself earlier while I was doing the investigation. Maybe I'll find something new here too. Baker, who was so we're talking here about H. Baker Jr., who's Republican or representative Tennessee, Republican, I think. Baker, who was a member of the Senate, a special committee created by the Senate to investigate the Watergate scandals during Nixon administration, said that he would have preferred a select committee modeled after the Watergate experience. They loved it, didn't they? The Watergate committee was drawn from the whole Senate, and Democrats and Republicans were equally represented.
It sounds like a rebranding. Like, let's not call it the Watergate scandal. Let's call it the Watergate experience.
yeah. Well, these guys are trying to fit it all into the same box, and all of these guys involved. That's part of something else. That's not even part of the same article. So I've gone off a little bit on there because I see how I got nipped over there, but that's quite interesting because it makes me want to go and search what that was about. Anyway, but it does show that we're in the Burlington Free Press. That's what they're called. That's what this is called. So this is the Burlington Free Press. And here you've got various articles, and there's like so many Watergate connections. That's what the press for the next 10 years after Watergate was just like every article had a connection with Watergate somehow, and it was trendy to put in and mention that other people were involved in Watergate. So it's really interesting that someone like Pottinger, who was so involved in Watergate, is like probably, which I reckon this would probably be about Watergate as well. Could we have a Watergate come up here? No, nothing on Watergate there, but you can imagine it.
Even that Levi's advert.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, that's right, Watergate.
Protect your Watergate.
If you
our new straight leg jeans.
If you turn it round, that's officially the Watergate, because that's what you open up to let the water.
Yeah, the Watergate's at the back, the Love Canal's at the front.
No, the other way round. The Love Canal.
Sorry, right. Yeah.
Which gender are we dealing with now? Let's not get into this, shall we? Let's not get into this right now. Right, so here we go. We had the North Bay Nugget. I mean, who doesn't want to have a newspaper called the North Bay Nugget? This is just showing that...
Sounds like something someone left in the toilet.
Yeah. That's disgusting. So this is just before the previous trial that we looked at. This is in different order. So this is what I was talking about in Canada. The Globe and Mail says Federal Justice Department in Toronto plans to ask a judge in Quebec to charge employees of a Canadian company with conspiracy to send arms illegally to South Africa, and they don't end up doing it. And it shows 50,000 artillery shells, and says a little bit about his background. Now, Bull's really interesting. He was I mean, you'll see it down on the corner screen for anybody who's been reading, and maybe there's some people who are actually reading some of the article down on the side of the screen. I was putting it for my own notes, but you are free to read it. And I'm sorry if I've not paid attention to that. But as you see here, HARP isn't the HARP that we know as being like other research, the high frequency wrecking. I know that high.
It's got two P's, right?
Yeah. Or two R's,
even.
Or maybe two A's.
Race.
I don't know.
It's got two with one letter. I know that.
One let's give it two H's and be really cool. HARP. That's it. Sorry, now I just sounded creepy. Anyway, this HARP was High Altitude Research Project, and that fell apart. That was a joint US and Canadian program, and that fell apart. And Space Research Corporation, this Gerald Bull thing, was then given all of the rest of the money for that to, as the article says, the joint governments gave the remainder of the HARP's assets to Bull's newly formed SRC in order to develop and commercialize the technology needed for superior long-range artillery. So this is extremely interesting. Like I say, there was a lot of movement, including with the cooperation of Israeli military industries. There was a lot of weapons that got shipped in by Bull to South Africa. And I'll repeat again, Bull gets killed by Mossad in the end. Well, they say it's probably Mossad, you know. Probably Mossad is like 2 words. It's probably the Mossad or probably the Mossad. I think 3 words. Let's say probably the Mossad. That comes up over and over again in assassinations for some reason. That 3 letter, there you go, 3 words. Arms case settled. What's this? This is the Fremont Tribune. So this is again. It was settled with the Canadians. That's what that was just showing. And again, these are all within the article to show you, because once we get to the Iran Contra stuff, well, a lot of this is in loads of different places. So when we get into that, it's a little bit more complicated. But anyway, that was Gerald Bull. So in the first half of 1980, here we go. We're getting into it. We're gonna stick it on 1992 now. We're going to do some talking, like I say, off the actual article itself at times to explain what's going on, because there's some really good sources for this. I could find all this information scattered all about the place, but I've tried to make the article as concise as possible, because the Iran-Contra affair is such a wide-ranging event. It's really hard to describe. Let me just check a couple of the documents and freshen them up. And this is one of the major documents that's of great importance that I will be talking about as well. This was in, I think, 1992 or something, 1993, January the 3rd, 1993. So the committee hearings were through 1992, I think. Basically, this was a joint report of the task force to investigate certain allegations concerning the holdings of American hostages in Iran in 1980. So this looks at something that's called the October Surprise Task Force. We're going to go back earlier, though, and we don't want to go, no, it's this, I just made everything big, and now you can see Gloria Steinem's name. I've ruined it for everybody. Quickly, everybody, close your eyes. So, in the beginning of 1980, he's representing, John Stanley Pottinger is in court representing this guy, Gerald V. Bull, for who's been caught smuggling arms on behalf of the CIA, in fact, to South Africa to fight against Angolan communists. A war which I think was won very quickly because they had so many weapons. But there was more going on, because in 1979, late 1979, I think it was, the Iranian embassy siege happened in Tehran. And a load of hostages were taken, and this was really bad for it spawned loads of movies and stuff, really bad for the intelligence services, because Iran was kicking off, but it threw up new opportunities, because there was one administration about to leave office. You had the Carter administration, well, not about to leave office, it was coming up, it was an election year, it's 1980, and the Republicans wanted to get Ronald Reagan and George Bush in, and the Democrats wanted to keep Jimmy Carter in. And this Iranian hostage crisis lasted for a year and a half through that whole period, and the whole time that's what was on the TV all the time. You know, that's what everybody was consuming. It's what everybody was worrying about and wondering. You know, if you want patriotism, if you go back and you hear what people were talking about during this period on American news, they were angry and they wanted action. People wanted to go to a war against Iran just for the fact of this hostage embassy siege, and it was a really awkward situation, but it gave a lot of these darker actors ability to do stuff behind the scenes. Now, there was lots of different efforts to make contact with the other side from the Americans, to make contact with the Iranians. They're supposed to be bitter enemies, but they were trying to make contact, and of course they're trying to make contact through intelligence networks mainly. So I explained in the article, I'm going to read it here. The U.S. Embassy hostage situation in Tehran had made public diplomatic options between Iran and America limited. On the 7th of December 1979, J. Stanley Pottinger wrote to Warren Christopher, who was then Deputy Secretary of State. The letter, on behalf of Cyrus Hashemi, Pottinger's client at the time, and contained a memorandum from Hashemi which stated the issues he believed Iran were most concerned about. The letter also suggested that Hashemi was in frequent contact with various important players within the Iranian government, and that he would be happy to become a conduit to help end the crisis via secretive diplomacy. Now, Cyrus Hashemi was a very interesting man. He was being represented by Pottinger, and he had an investment bank which Pottinger had actually invested some money into as well. He had invested about, I think it was something like 100,000 or something in Hashemi's investment bank. Now, you will find out, we will be able to know loads about what happened during this year between Cyrus Hashemi and Stanley Pottinger, because federal authorities got authority to wiretap Pottinger's and Cyrus Hashemi's offices to be able to hear all their conversations, because they were so central to something that was so dangerous and was obviously multiple things. Iran-Contra, the October surprise, they all start in Stanley Pottinger's office, really. They all start as ideas put out by Cyrus Hashemi. Cyrus Hashemi was a man who I think he had a couple of brothers, but Jamshid Hashemi was his number one go-to brother. He was a guy around, he had loads of identities. I got it written down here, some of the names. He also was called Abdullah Hashemi, Jamshid Kalaj, and Jamshid Pasa. But Jamshid Hashemi was the naughty brother, and Cyrus Hashemi was the one who could convince people to come to the table. And the CIA wanted this, but they weren't sure, because they had done their research eventually on Jamshid Hashemi and discovered he was basically a fraudster who ripped people off. But he would basically orbit round his brother and try and like sweep up any sort of like thing he could make some money off. And there was a lot of things that happened that led to the Iran-Contra affair. Because, right, okay, so first of all, Pottinger has just finished representing an arms smuggler who breaks an arms embargo against an enemy state of the United States. In that sense, South Africa, the apartheid regime, is supposed to be naughty in America's books. And later that year, he is about to start smuggling arms to Iran via Iran-Contra affair, and with the help of Cyrus Hashemi and others. This goes on then for years and years. And this is all exposed in 1984, and his involvement in it is exposed in 1974. So this is really, it's really important to understand. This is one of the most important periods of history, because while we're also looking at the gun smuggling, the arms running, while we're looking at that, what we're not looking at is the fact that Pottinger is central in creating a coup that sees his friend George Bush get into office, the former director of the CIA, a coup that is the October surprise, that means that the hostages, when they're about to be released, are not released until the day after the election, that really forces the election to go for Reagan and Bush. And basically he's going to get his buddy George H.W. Bush in the White House.
That notification you, Johnny, or is that on our computer?
What notification?
Did you hear just a doo-dum? Then it was like a...
No, I didn't hear anything.
No?
Maybe it's in the distance. Maybe I didn't hear it.
Okay. Hope it's not coming out on the recording. Apologies if it is.
Yeah, I don't worry too much. I think these guys by now, they're they're so enthralled by this they wouldn't even notice.
It's an October surprise alert that keeps going.
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Ding,
Every
ding,
time
ding,
we
ding,
say
ding.
October surprise.
Yeah, well, this is really interesting. So where do we start? Because it's such a big one, and it's so important. But basically, they didn't trust Jamshed Hashemi, but they were willing to work with Cyrus Hashemi, and the top people at the CIA were like, okay, well, if they can get a setup with some different people. There was Ayatollah Pasindade, was related to Ayatollah Khomeini. Admiral Mandani was seen as a future potential leader. These guys were people who Cyrus Hashemi could potentially put them in contact with. So even though the initial attempts to do this failed, they continued with the attempts. But the initial attempt included this. This is a very interesting case. So Carter's CIA funneled $500,000 to Iranian candidate. So Washington, the CIA tried to funnel $500,000 to a candidate in Iran's 1980 presidential election, as the Carter administration worked to free American-held hostages by Tehran, according to Senate investigators. The secret operation was uncovered during a probe into whether the 1980 Reagan-Bush campaign struck a deal with Iran to delay the release of 52 Americans until after the U.S. presidential election. In a report released yesterday, the investigator concluded the GOP campaign probably did not strike a hostage deal with Iran, but was on the outer limits of propriety in its dealings on the issue. Now that was sealed up. Everything that could be kept out of the case was left out of the case, and lots of things actually happened. This is covered in a lot of this covered in Whitney Webb's book One Nation Under Blackmail, in meetings in Europe between people like William Casey, who would later be director of the CIA, like I said, under Bush, and was Bush's campaign manager. These meetings happened all throughout 1980 and were exactly for this, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. It's really interesting what we're going to talk about. Reagan's then campaign director, the late William Casey, was intensely involved in the hostage crisis, and probably conducted informal, clandestine, and potentially dangerous efforts on the campaign's behalf to monitor. The most remarkable disclosure in the report stems not from Casey's hostage efforts, but those of Carter administration. The covert effort to influence Iran's presidential election, details of which remain classified, arose when the U.S. officials contacted a pair of Iranian arms dealers, Cyrus and Jamshed Hashemi. So Cyrus Hashemi, of course, Pottinger's client, seeking avenues to free the hostages. Charles Cogan, chief of the Near East and South Asia division of CIA's clandestine service, met with the Hashemi brothers on January the 5th, 1980, at a hotel in New York City, according to the report by the Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee on the Near East. The Hashemis had promised to put U.S. officials in touch with top officials in Tehran government, including the family member of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. At the same time, they sought financial support for Admiral Ahmed Mandani, who is running for a new post of President of the Islamic Republic. He said Mandani and a Khomeini ally, Abul Hassan Bansada, had emerged as leading contenders for the post less than 3 weeks before the January 5th election. The CIA decided decided then to provide $500,000 in cash to Hashemis for a sensitive covert operation in Iran. The Senate's panel report said Senator Jim Jeffords of Vermont, the senior Republican on the subcommittee, confirmed that the operation involved election support for Mandani, they spelled it wrong there, as did intelligence sources. Kogan, who used a pseudonym when dealing with the Hashemis, attempted to deliver the cash to them at the same New York hotel on January 17th. The two businessmen refused the cash and insisted on a wire transfer from a Swiss bank to a bank in London, a report said. Bansada won the election in a landslide, and Kogan later determined that $100,000 or less of the money was used for its intended purposes. Cyrus Hashemi later wrote a check for about $290,000 in Iranian funds to Kogan and delivered it to him at the office of Washington attorney J. Stanley Pottinger for return to the CIA, the report said. So the money that was given to try and swing the election for president for Mandani was not all of it was used. In actual fact, there's a lot more to this. A hell of a lot more to this. There's arguments happening. They don't trust they don't trust the Hashemis at all. The CIA get really angry, and representatives say they've got to bring back as much of the money. And if you notice, there's $500,000 gone, $100,000 or less went to the campaign, leaving $400,000, and then $290,000 were returned to the
not even enough to cover the curtains.
No.
I know. So for some poor Pottinger has to make wicker curtains again. Oh, poor Pottinger. So he's the one who sees that CIA money returned to the CIA into the lap of J. Stan himself. Now later you find out that Cyrus Hashemi is working for the CIA. So they're all working for the CIA at this point. This is a big CIA tug-off. They're having a great old time. But they're also doing something else. On the investigation's primary focus, the October surprise allegations, the panel found insufficient credible evidence to suggest that the campaign negotiated a delay in the hostages' release to ensure Reagan's elections. So that's what they say at the end. At the end, they say they did not do that. It's all fine. They basically found a Stanley J. Pottinger ending to the whole affair and cleared him of it all, like they always like to do. And so, Stan the man. And it's amazing that at that point, you know, there's other things going on in 1980. So at the same time that these are being returned, we're seeing behind the scenes there's memorandums. So this is the Office of the Historian. It's called Foreign Relations of the United States, 1977 to 1980, Volume 11, Part 1, Iran Hostage Crisis, November 1979 to September 1980. 310 memorandum from Secretary of State Muskie to President Carter. Possible approach from Bansada. So this is a memorandum that comes in from intelligence services. We have just received a report from a meeting yesterday in Madrid between Khomeini's nephew, Reza Pasandida, the son of Khomeini's older brother, and Washington attorney Stan Pottinger. The meeting was arranged at Pasandida's request. According to Pottinger, who's now obviously reporting directly to the CIA and reporting back here, Pasandida claimed to be acting as Bansada's emissary. He stated that Bansada was now interested in beginning talks in Europe between his representatives and US representatives to discuss a possible settlement, including release of the hostages. Pasandida told Pottinger that his approach had been authorized by Bansada and that Khomeini was aware of it. He claims to be a close friend and ally of Bansada, and our information indicates that this is probably correct. He also says that he has been used as a channel of communication. Khomeini. Pasandida suggests that this proposal for discussions has arisen out of a consensus among Khomeini, Bansada, Pasandida's father, Khomeini's brother, and Pasandida himself that the time has come to end the crisis. Pasandida says Bansada is seeking through these talks to develop proposals to put before Parliament. Right, okay, so until we have additional information, nonetheless, direct channel of communication to Bansada would obviously be helpful, and therefore I believe we should explore this contact further. With your approval, I plan to give Pottinger the Washington lawyer, the attached oral message offering to send representative, probably Hal Saunders, to meet with Passandiga to discuss the outstanding issues between the US and Iran. Listen, J. Stanley Pottinger isn't just central to organizing the release of the hostages and the Iran-Contra arms smuggling. He's not just central. There's something else going on here. And it's not mentioned in this memorandum. It's mentioned later. I put it in the article. I'll see how far down the article. Here we go. This is actually from this report, I believe. Yeah, this is from this report. But I'm going to read it from the actual article itself. This is Bin Sadr being questioned. He gave testimony to the October Surprise Task Force. And he said, the question was, well, did Mr. Passandiga tell you, Mr. President, who he had met? So I said, who are these Americans? And he said it was Mr. Reagan's envoys. So Mr. Passandiga believed that the people that he was meeting with were people that Reagan had sent. Yes, quite, because he told me that if the deal is not made with you, then they'll make a deal with your rivals. And with Mr. Carter, they were already in contact. They had 3 different channels of communications with President Carter. Those 2 French lawyers, the Swiss ambassador, the German ambassador. So it wasn't worth talking about that with Mr. Passandiga. Question. So you're, just for the sake of summarizing so that I clearly understand it, Mr. Carter has 3 channels open through you, Mr. Passandiga, at Mr. Khomeini's behest, meets with 2 people in Madrid, Mr. Hashemi and Mr. Pottinger. You believe that when Mr. Passandiga met with them, they all they did was discuss negotiations on behalf of Mr. Reagan and not Mr. Carter. Is that right? Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And that was very right. Let me just make sure that that notification wasn't me at the same time as I'm talking. There was something really important within that, is that basically Mr. Bin Sadr there talks about Pottinger and Hashemi being representatives of Reagan. They were not there to represent Carter. They were there to make the October Surprise happen, and Pottinger was actually forming a political coup. He was creating an illegal, illicit, definitely, publicity stunt that would cause Reagan and Bush to win the American election and subvert democracy. That's how serious this is. He wasn't only running guns through with the help of probably many different people from the CIA, Cyrus Hashemi and others. They were doing other things too, and they were running guns. It's quite amazing, quite what was happening. In Whitney's book, she talks about some of the people during these meetings that were happening. She talks about Harry Ben Menashe, who's of course got loads of relationships, big ones. So she says in her book, according to Jamshid, this is Jamshid Hashemi, Casey, that's William Casey, so the one who we talked about, who becomes director of CIA under Reagan, flanked by Donald Gregg and an unidentified man, attended 2 days of meetings with himself, his brother Cyrus, and Iranian officials in Madrid in late July concerning the hostages. Much of the debate relating to the October Surprise Task Force revolved around Casey having been in London for a World War II historical conference on the days he was alleged to have been in Madrid. The task force noted that there were significant ambiguities in the conference attendance records, making it hard to know whether Casey could be considered accounted for in London. Madrid is only an hour and a half from London by plane, conceivably giving Casey enough time to move between cities in a relatively insignificant amount of time. While the media soundly rejected the possibility that this occurred, the State Department cable later emerged from this precise time period, stating that Casey had indeed been in Madrid for purposes unknown. And Webb also points out there was another name that appeared on the guest record alongside the probable alias of Jamshid Hashemi on July the 23rd. A Robert Gray checked into the Hotel Ritz, and on the July 25th he checked out. Was Robert Gray actually Robert Keith Gray? Speculation swirled in the media as Gray at the time was working on Reagan's campaign directly under Casey. So Reagan's people, and this includes Pottinger must be seen as Reagan's people, were forming an event that would mean subverting American democracy. This is like we've got this far. Pottinger's done quite a bit, I think.
He's not even like 34 or something, isn't he? He's like mid-30s.
Yeah.
He's done well.
He's done, I mean, he's accomplished.
He is accomplished. He's an accomplished bastard. That's for sure. he's a shit. He does lots of. So that was a lot about the October surprise. Now I'm gonna move off what is the October surprise a little bit, but we're still sticking with the same cast of characters, because I mean, it's really important to understand that they had Pottinger wasn't only taking part in these dealings, these were all tied up with arms deals as well behind the scenes, illegal arms deal to Iran that later get uncovered, and Pottinger gets exposed. It's everywhere. By 1984 it comes out, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But he wasn't the only person who was involved in the Iran-Contra affair. Pottinger is not the only person who's involved in the Iran-Contra affair at this point. And I say it in the article, but Cyrus Hashemi and Stanley Pottinger were not the only person involved in the US arms deals during this period. In fact, two very close associates of Cyrus Hashemi were also involved in the conspiracy to run arms as part of the Iran-Contra affair. The so-called Saudi Arabian businessman Adnan Khashoggi and the Iranian called Manucha Ghorbanifar. It's hard to say that. Ghorbanifar. It is in it. Were also both employed as conduits for the US sanctioned arms sales in Iran. In fact, at the same time, Adnan Khashoggi was working with the National Security Council as a middleman for these illegal arms deals. The government informant, along with federal agents, were involved in the sting operation targeting the Saudis. So they were targeting Adnan Khashoggi because they didn't know what was going on. On the 21st of December 1986, Robert E. Kessler wrote an article for Newsday which reported this failed operation to ensnare Adnan Khashoggi. The successful attempt to ensnare Khashoggi, which I mentioned in conversation between which was mentioned in a conversation between Hashemi and former lawyer for Khashoggi, that was recorded by U.S. Customs Service agents on January 17, 1986, seems bizarre enough in retrospect. Obviously, they weren't told everything that was going on, said a ranking Justice Department official referring to the agents and federal prosecutors who were working on the sting. So they didn't know what was actually going on. And they go on to say the story includes a 1980 offer to free the US hostages in Iran that backfired, an investigation by FBI and Customs Services of a former Justice Department official who had been instrumental in investigating FBI agents for misconduct, Stanley Pottinger, the disappearance of a key wiretap tape, the recent demotion of the federal agent who lost the tape, and the death of Hashemi in what some defense attorneys say were mysterious circumstances. Indeed, in 1986, Cyrus Hashemi died very quickly from a fast-acting leukemia, which seems to be that he was poisoned by something. And Kessler reveals that the secretive Foreign Intelligence Service based in Washington had authorized the 1980 wiretaps, which originally drew officials to an involvement of Pottinger himself. So they only knew Pottinger was involved, and Pottinger only became involved later in the other things, partially because of the fact that it was being tapped at the time. So they were trying to infiltrate him. But Hashemi and Khashoggi had worked together, and this is really important for this case, before their joint arms smuggling venture. He, Hashemi, this is from Newsday article, Hashemi, has reported the Iranian state oil company, as represented the Iranian state oil company in London, and had been a partner of Khashoggi and Furmarks in an unsuccessful attempt early in 1985 to supply arms and other goods to Iran. But Hashemi and Khashoggi split before Khashoggi went on to serve as a middleman for US sanctioned arms deal. Some sources said Hashemi also knew Ghorbanifar, who he introduced to Khashoggi. So these are all guys who are friends. What people don't really realize, and they talk about what they talk about here. I mean, this is amazing. The article, there's so many fingers pointing at Pottinger. That same article talks about Pottinger and says, when Pottinger was in the Justice Department, he was instrumental in seeking to indict about 60 FBI agents for illegal break-ins at the homes of friends and relatives of alleged members of the Weather Underground in New York area. That's like all Watergate stuff there. He's also the boyfriend of feminist Gloria Steinem. Yes, he is. Cases were eventually brought against only 2 ranking FBI officials in connections with the break-ins. The 2 were tried and convicted, but were pardoned by President Ronald Reagan. Convenient. In 1980, sources familiar with Pottinger's role said he was not only Hashemi's lawyer, but also a business associate, having invested $100,000 in merchant bank Hashemi started in London. And again, I mentioned about some of the relationships with Khashoggi and Epstein, because of course Epstein was involved with that same Adnan Khashoggi at the same time in the Iran-Contra affair. This is amazing. I find it amazing. So in fact, J. Stanley Pottinger, one of the lead lawyers now representing many of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, organized a significant part of the Iran-Contra affair and benefited from the illegal sales of weapons alongside Cyrus Hashemi, Adnan Khashoggi, and Jeffrey Epstein himself, who also benefited. Oh. It is also during this period where Stanley Pottinger later admits first working with Jeffrey Epstein, but that will be in the next part of the series. And we are coming up to the end of the Iran-Contra part. It's easier to read within the article. It's hard for me to explain like this because it's such a difficult thing to understand, and there's so many different actors and there's so many different events, and Iran-Contra is mixed in with October Surprise.
I mean, there's that chiseled jaw we were looking for. Mm-hmm, there it is. Mm-hmm. So chiseled, it looks like she swallowed a chisel.
It looks like Stanley Pottinger may have just actually
put on a sex change.
Yeah. Put on a wig, had a little bit of a nose thing done, and jumps from backwards and forwards.
Before we get onto this, though, I mean, it's really just to take a step back for a sec. It's kind of crazy that Epstein is even linked we all know he's linked to child trafficking, but it's like the smuggling of guns and arms as well. Just wouldn't have expected.
No, it's like new information, really. I mean, because like you said in the previous episode, Johnny, but I think we all had an idea of what Jeffrey was, like, the sexual predator and stuff. But he was a man of many talents, especially if he's got close to someone like Pottinger, who, well, clearly is a man of his own right.
I think all of these guys ended up in the same area, but because they've all got the same skill set. And it was real rare talent. I mean, there's not many people who could hide in the shadows or who have that much confidence to be able to think they can hide in the shadow. Because if you think about Pottinger, he spent all of that time in officially in government or under the Nixon and Ford administrations, and you'd think he would have potentially felt like he had a lot more to lose. he seems to be really risque, and to have that level of risk attached to someone who wants to go up in their career so much. Well, it has to be a different type of career. It can't be the same type of career anymore, can it? So that's why intelligence seems to work. Intelligence definitely seems to work for Pottinger. And by this point, of course, I mean, when we're seeing the end of his time in government, we're seeing, oh yeah, there's links here. Oh, he's finding all of the right conclusions for the reports, isn't he? You know, he's making sure all of the T's are crossed and all of the I's are dotted and all. And there's no doubts left. There's definitely no conspiracies going on. And then he gets closer to the CIA as he leaves, and then he's basically, I still think that even his early work within this Troy Mailing Pottinger law firm may have actually been somehow like getting into companies, big companies, may have actually been a CIA effort in itself as well. Because to get something over a big company that has bases all around the world is obviously convenient for clear reasons. So I think there's a lot of that. But then what happens in 1980? I mean, I wonder. It's trying to understand when he first was recruited by the CIA or when he first became an agent. That's kind of hard. It's kind of hard because it could be really early on and then everything makes sense. It could be in the middle and everything makes sense. And it could be later on and everything makes sense. You know, he is obviously. It doesn't matter if he's recruited by the CIA. He was always going to be or when he was recruited by the CIA, he was always going to be recruited by the CIA. Eventually.
Yeah, he was always going to catch their attention at some point.
Yeah. So by this point, by where we've got to in the 1980s, he is definitely CIA's boy. He's fronting out the negotiations for the hostages as part of Reagan and Bush's secretive intelligence campaign to coup the democratic country of America. The coup that loads of people know about. You know, democracy is balls. It's just balls. They've wrecked it too many times. It can't be taken seriously, really. It's not really that. They're letting us live at the moment. They're doing that sort of thing. But yeah, this guy is really interesting. We're going into a different stage now. We're going to go back in time a little bit. I'm going to introduce you to Pottinger's girlfriend. And Pottinger's girlfriend. Yeah, look at she's got that jaw. Now, I don't understand how she became a feminist icon, and I've entitled this part.
I think she put those glasses on. As soon as she put those glasses on, bang, feminist icon right there.
And a couple of streaks.
Yeah. I know she won't mind us being mean about her. She'd take it on the chin.
Oh. And what a lovely chin she has. Kind of like Desperate Dan. So, how the man disguised himself as a feminist icon is what I call this. Because that really is, what you're looking at there, Gloria Steinem, is the man. She is definitely the man. And she was born to Leo and Ruth Steinem, born in Michigan, does a load of things. But then eventually she's recruited by the CIA. And she's recruited by the CIA in 1958. She leaves college. She goes to Smith's College. She leaves in 1956, and she apparently wins a scholarship. She's one of the last people to win these scholarships. And with these youth scholarships during the Cold War period, you find a lot of them were just like recruitment for really, really high functioning kids. They're like, oh, that kid's really intelligent. Let's send him on this thing where he goes to wherever in the world, and then he meets up with our guys, and our guys check him out, recruit him properly, far away from the maddened crowd, so no one really knows what's going on. And she kind of gets recruited and scooped up by that. So I note that she wins the Chester Bowles Scholarship. And she seems to be wherever the action was. So when she's traveling around India, includes the riots in Ramnad, the revolution in Rangoon, as I say. She's also befriends Indira Gandhi of the Gandhi family and the widow of revolutionary humanist Narendra Nath Roy. So she's obviously meeting all of these people and being the center of everything. It's really bizarre. It's like her story. She's also writing a documentary for NBC while she's going around the place, or one of the American networks. I can't remember if it's NBC in actual fact. But she's also gets, as I say, surreptitiously recruited by the CIA while in India. And later on, she's going to get back and she's going to be thrust into her first CIA operation, this square-jawed lass who's put on a wig and glasses and called herself a feminist. And really, if you see some of the things she's dressed in, it's like, I'm a feminist because I wear a leather skirt. It's the type of very weak feminism. But there's some really interesting things that happen in between. I'm going to talk about something else first. I wonder if we're going to get. Let's see. Maybe we'll go forward and back. District area students graduation. Oh yes, Gloria Steinem. Gloria Steinem. Oh, there you go. Well, let's start talking about her first. Let's just go through this like this. It's much easier to do it this way. And Gloria Steinem at 45, this is in 1979. So like I say, and they talk about it in this, New York, ever since she became a public person in the mid-1960s, they say mid-1960s, a public person, Gloria Steinem's private life has been off limit. As co-founder of Miss Magazine in 1972, she became the country's most visible feminist leader. Visible because she co-founded Miss Magazine, which is obviously a CIA cutout magazine, just to infiltrate the minds of the youth, because she's a dirty, square-jawed CIA recruit.
I just thought she was most visible because of her chin.
Yeah. Well, you can see her chin both left and right. Whichever way you look at her, it's as long as the other way. Just that's one of the things about her that's so amazing. As her 45th birthday on March 25th approaches, making her an Aries, I think, Steinem talked publicly for the first time about her private life, about men and her romantic relationships, about aging and beauty, about her career and her decision not to have children, about sex, love and gossips. Basically, she doesn't stop talking because she no, I'm so great. But none of it's true. So, she's telling half of it what she's telling. It's a complete lie. Sitting at the head of a long conference table in Miss Office in Manhattan, Steinem spoke about Stan Pottinger, the man with whom she's been living for the past year. Pottinger, 39, former head of Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, is now in a private practice specializing in civil rights cases. Right, so the compliance and integrity officer working for big companies to fend off fights against bigger companies by using blackmail and bribery, who goes then to defend and represent seemingly only arms dealers who are illegally smuggling arms and trying to get them off, is specializing in civil rights cases. I'm not sure if that works out. It's 79 exact time. I'm not sure if that's true. They're cases in which some principle is at stake, so there's some satisfaction, Steinem said. In the mid-1970s, Pottinger headed the department probe into the FBI and Kent State cases. I wonder what he found in those. He was also responsible.
His probe was just with his finger, just no, nothing. His little finger.
Are you talking about Kent State or Steinem now?
It wasn't a very extensive probe, just his little finger.
Yeah. That's basically what she likes. Anyway, she's a little finger type of girl, if you know what I mean. Little government. Anyway, he also responsible for investigating sex discrimination charges. with his finger, which is how we met. Steinem said, "There she is, looking pretty." Look, Steinem at 26. She was only developing her jaw then. I mean, her jaw like that. Yeah, help.
That was maybe sneeze.
Trying to say something. Brushing back the famous straight shoulder length hair from her face. The famous straight shoulder length hair from her face, brushing it back. Famous straight. Look how straight it is. It's the straightest hair. It's famous for being both very straight and very shoulder length and
Very
hair.
shoulder length.
And being in my face and being brushed away at the same time. She recalled her feelings about marriage now and when she was 21 and engaged. Basically, she talks about a load of things about, I wanted to do all this, I was feminist, and there's a thing. And I went around India, and I learned about it like that, and I'm a really great woman. And I'm a great woman.
I like the bit where it said her decision to not have children, and then it quickly said afterwards, and her hopes for the future. Not having kids, not having grandkids, dying alone. I mean,
there you are. Look at that chin, though. That's a fantastic chin. And she's dying alone under that hair. Look at that face. None of that hair is straight. That is the messiest hair.
That is not straight.
Her famous shoulder length chin.
Yeah. I like it. The famous shoulder length trim.
No, it's not that
bad. Okay. Right. Anyway, let's leave Steinem back then. And you know, it's extremely interesting. Steinem fails with Kelly in 1983. No. There she is. Oh man.
Slightly nicer.
Oh no, she's got two of those straight She's got two of those straight chins now.
She flicked away her famous shoulder length chin.
Brushed it over her back.
Famous straight chin. Right. Okay, anyway, the morning news. We're in the morning news. It's coming up to Christmas. Merry Christmas. Sunday news. Jen, I'm going to be free. Ooh, I'm already free. Steinem fills in the colours of her nearing 50 dreams. So this is really important and really interesting. Okay, right. This is one... it's probably about 6 months before her and Stanley Pottinger break up. She met Stanley Pottinger in 1974. They start working together or living together, partying together, sometimes living a little bit together, known out and about. She's as CIA as they come, he's as CIA as they come. They're obviously a good match. And so she's getting on now, and this is a really important time. So Steinem has been going along with all of this, giving into the process. The public rare view of her personal life on ABC's TV's 2020. She was shown dancing at a disco with a longtime friend, Stan Pottinger, then later demonstrating some childhood tap dancing ability for Barbara Walters. So Stan's mentioned in this briefly, and she's about to dump Stan, partially I think because she's still out at parties with him up until the point when the Iran-Contra scandal breaks and his name is put all over the newspapers as being central in organizing, as wiretaps showing him and his conversations with Cyrus Hashemi in 1980, showing that he was central to organizing the arms deal for Iran and probably the October surprise. So that caused loads of trouble. So Miss CIA over here runs off with Mort Zuckerman, the industrialist billionaire, who was also, I think he might have been related to the mega group guys at some point. But these guys all these all in the same circles now, and we go back in time and we see if we got a little sign of her younger Gloria Steinem when she was younger. But we're going to get on to this. And I'm going to quote from her book first, because we haven't got much more to go through. I know it looks like a lot, but we haven't got much more to go through. It's probably another 15 minutes. And we're going to talk about an event that happened. You see, Gloria Steinem, let's go to here first. Let's borrow it again. This should be from one of my favorite books ever to be written. Hugh Wilford is my favorite person in the whole world. There's multiple points where I find his work massively important, and he talks about Gloria Steinem in his masterpiece, The Mighty Wurlitzer, which also helped me understand Kissinger's international seminar. It was the fall of 1958, and like many educated of her generation, Gloria Steinem was having difficulty finding a rewarding job. Dazzlingly bright and talented, just returned from a 1.5-year-long scholarship trip to India, where she had befriended Indira Gandhi and widow revolutionary humanist M.N. Roy. The 24-year-old Smith graduate was reduced to sleeping on the floors of friends' apartments as she is hunted for work in New York. Then came the call from Clive S. Gray, a young man she had met in Delhi when he was ostensibly working on a doctoral dissertation about Indian higher education system. Some former officer of the NSA, that's the National Students Association, had just created an organization to encourage attendance by young non-communist Americans at a youth festival being held the following summer by the communists in Vienna. Was she interested in running it? The suggestion immediately appealed to Steinem, not just because it meant paid work, but because it also offered an outlet for the political idealism awakened in her by her Indian experiences. And soon after the call from Gray, she met in New York with another former NSA president turned CIA officer, Harry Lunn, who, like most other young men of her acquaintance, promptly fell in love with her. She travelled to Cambridge. Well, they up themselves, but Hugh Wilford knows best. She travelled to Cambridge there to be interviewed by two former National Students Association vice presidents for international affairs, Len Bebchik and Paul E. Sigmund Jr., and Boston lawyer George Abrams. By January 1959, she had taken up the post of Director of Independent Services for Information with the offices in Harvard Yard, again based in Harvard, and a salary of $100 a week, plus $5 per diem, because Cambridge rents were so expensive, a generous allowance fixed by the infatuated Lunn. The ISI was a CIA operation from beginning to end. Spectacularly staged festivals celebrating the themes of international peace and friendship were crucial elements of the communist campaign to capture young hearts and minds. Witness the success of the 1951 Berlin rally, which had helped to concentrate CIA minds on student events. The fact that the Vienna World Festival of Youth and Students were being planned personally by the new head of the KGB, the former student leader Alexander Shabchin, was some measure of the importance it was accorded to the Kremlin. The CIA had attempted to disrupt earlier festival held in Moscow in 1957 by providing funding to NSA delegation briefly in its members before its depart. I'm going to skip on because I want to get to a certain point. Here you go. This is really important. The 1959 rally in Vienna, I may have just skipped to the same part. 1959 rally in Vienna was the first to be held outside the communist bloc, and this greatly increased the scope for such activities. The NSA, however, was officially boycotting Vienna, hence the need for other measures to ensure attendance by anti-communist American students. Lunn, Sigmund and Bebchik were all working directly for the CIA. When they organized the ISI, so too was Gray, whose real purpose in India was talent spotting potential agents in the student movement. As for Steinem herself, she became witting when she began asking questions about the ISI's funding, and the undercover CIA officers explained that the Boston grandees and foundations apparently subsidizing the ventures were in fact pass-throughs for secret official funding. So she knows from the start she is recruited by the CIA definitely during that period. But the person she had met in India, and something happens in between her going to that meeting where she agrees to go to Austria to this Vienna festival and campaign against the communists and organize the non-communist fight back against these communist youth leaders. Something else happens in between her being what I see as her being recruited in this obvious mission round India that was to gain experience and a backstory so that she could then be said, oh, she did all of these wonderful things and now she's a civil rights activist. Although she was implanted with really famous people and put in really famous situations. Like one day she woke up and there had been just coincidentally a coup in the country where she was when she was like traveling out of India and stuff, you know. So all of these things happened. But in between her returning to America to have these meetings at Harvard and be based on this, something else happened, and there was a transferred admiral named Rear Admiral Lindsay Quiggle, and he's lost at sea. Now, if you go past a certain point in the 1950s, you will not find his name ever really mentioned again, and it's a real sad fact. Quiggle, his name was Quiggle. And he was a rear admiral, but he was bigger than that. In fact, he was due to take over. He was to become commander of Amphibious Group 1 at San Diego. That's Amphibious Group 1. That's an entire naval group. That's an enormous responsibility. He was a big guy, and he was being transferred on this ship. It was a passenger ship, but was originally built during the war to be a Navy ship, the President Cleveland, but by the time the ship was finished, the war was over, and so was repurposed. Now, on the ship, and one of the last people to mention to see Quiggle alive turned out to be this newly recruited CIA Gloria Steinem, 24 of Washington, who gives the narrative to the event of Quiggle. Quiggle's on this ship. He's there 800 miles outside San Francisco, and here's what is said over here. He goes missing. Fellow passengers said Quiggle had been acting peculiarly. One, Gloria Steinem, 24 of Washington, D.C., so she's at Washington, D.C. now, said a ship officer told her, so second-hand information already, Quiggle was heard to say to his wife, "You are better off as a widow." The Admiral then kissed his wife and walked slowly from their stateroom, Miss Steinem said, which seems like a very carefully put in line to say, oh, look, and that's it. He said something bad to his wife. Now, his wife never says that he said this out loud. The person who Steinem claims has said this never says out loud. It's always Steinem said this. No one else on the crew was allowed to speak about this. Only she created the narrative, and it was the only narrative there. Admiral Quiggle had been named previously in the previous year to a US-Japan panel. He was also part of a UN, and here he is, Lynn Quiggle. He was part of some sort of UN program as well. And this is about
kind of amphibious.
He does, doesn't he? He looks very froggy.
That's what I was thinking, a little frog man.
Yeah, little frog man. But that happens sometimes, doesn't it? That happens. But don't feel bad. Just because he was a frog man doesn't mean he was a sad frog man. But they want, and there you go, UN Armistice Commission he was on. So a lot of these I can skip through this sort of stuff as just to explain. And again, in a different article, the Admiral, oh no, that's the same article. I'm lying. That's exactly the same. Admiral's disappearance. And it was widely reported around this time, and the skipper classified it as suicide. Doyle Quiggle said, who's Quiggle's brother, and Quiggle said that he had no right. He says, look, there was nothing in his character to justify such a conclusion that it could be suicide, and he says that it doesn't look like suicide, and that's not the position that anybody was taking. Eventually, this just disappears out of the news, though. This Quiggle case just goes away. Just vanishes. This is one of the last, and here again, the narrative the one set down by Steinem keeps getting repeated over and over. There's loads of these little articles where they'll show a little picture of Quiggle and they'll say missing at sea, and this is from after the thing, and you say you're better off a widow. Now he's saying you're better off without me before whatever, and then he kisses his wife and goes off and commits suicide. And Gloria Steinem mentions this once, where she says, I had a choice, either learn Chinese or get converted and talk to the crew. And this is where she's talking about getting onto the ship. She's claiming that she was a stowaway on this ship that Quiggle was on. Gloria explains, not only did the crew speak English, they sneaked her above decks during the day so she could mingle with the more privileged passengers. Oh, a stowaway. Apart from she wasn't. Among them were Rear Admiral and Mrs. Quiggle. And when Admiral Quiggle disappeared en route, the tragedy was the talk of the ship, especially since one of the ship's officers had overheard the Admiral's tell his wife, you'd be better off a widow.
One thing they don't usually catch stowaways doing is mingling.
Yeah, I know. It just
generally
seems like
hiding of fear of getting caught. That's why they're a stowaway.
Preposterous. And I've got another article that's included. I haven't got it here. It's in the source of it's in the actual piece, sourced up. It shows that it says at the time that Steinem had befriended the Quiggles. It said she had befriended her, so that mingling had led to friendly talking. And she says, when they docked, the captain forbade the crew to speak to the press about the incident, but Gloria had received no such instructions, so she tried to be helpful. She answered reporters' questions and was shocked to find herself quoted from Washington to Tokyo. Oh, shocked to have supplied a narrative after being recruited by the CIA. So it's extremely interesting. And of course, that Mighty Wurlitzer piece is extremely important as well. Really important to understand who Gloria Steinem was, her relationship with Stan Pottinger. There's a fair few repeats in this. Her very straight chin. And eventually, of course, she goes and works works for the CIA as a feminist leader. She paints herself as a feminist leader, yet most feminist leaders say she doesn't represent anything we say. And then as soon as feminist is needed and the trans debate comes in, she just turns against them anyway, so it doesn't matter anyway. And so they talk about, she's reported all throughout the 80s. She's reported as this amazing, she's reported alongside Streep and others who were the most popular people at the time, being reported as these massively important people. And it doesn't look like it. Gloria was house guesting. That's what they call it, with Capitol Attorney Stan Pottinger on Long Island recently, house guesting, putting people up. I don't know what that means, but she's all around town by this point. And one of the things they do is they go to a cruise, Stan and Gloria, for Edgar Bronfman, his wife, doing a charity for Seagrams. And of course, I wouldn't be surprised if that was also gave them links to Epstein as well. And I think this also, that one, you don't really need to see because it's the same story basically. Excellence in Steinem. So here is basically 1984. This is the last time, May 1984. I think it's June, so it's just a few weeks later.
Bill Real. It's nearly like B Real from Cypress Hill.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And his hair as well. His hair
cool.
could be a bit Cypress Hill, he's got a bit of a cool looking afro going on there. But basically by this point, this is the last time that Gloria Steinem is mentioned with as Pottinger, Stan Pottinger. And as you see, I'm mixing up his name now. Stan Pottinger.
Well, he has got an identity crisis,
Yeah.
Clearly.
July. So it's July is when, here we go, 5 charged with selling supplies to Iran. And here it says New York, Associated Press, Dayton Daily News are reporting on their Dayton son of Dayton, Ohio, of course, as we know from the previous episode. 5 men were charged Wednesday with illegally selling military supplies to Iran during the hostage crisis, and authorities said they were investigating whether J. Stanley Pottinger, a former Dayton attorney, aided them. Well, he does, and he doesn't get charged. As Rudolph Giuliani, he was
investigating himself.
Yeah. The investigation as to Pottinger is still continuing, U.S. Attorney Rudolph W. Giuliani said. So Giuliani is basically investigating yourself anyway.
Right,
And that's it. So Stan Pottinger is now well known. I mean, he turns up here and there, like Kathy Lee Gifford, who was formerly Kathy Lee Johnson, who's a sweetheart at the time, and presents a show with
unfortunate picture. That one, it looks like the sex doll.
Yeah, after a busy day, she got a date with Stanley Pottinger, and that's the picture they put with it. A former Gloria Steinem beau. I'm more in love right now than I've ever been, said Johnson.
He just shown her his October surprise there.
I know, yeah, that's a good one. Well, afterwards, she says she fell in love with Stanley Pottinger, men who were emotionally unavailable. I was still in an emotional rut myself, didn't have a self-esteem, and I dated men very similar to my first husband. She said Stanley was a roller coaster, brought me to the heights of joy and depths of despair. So obviously that's not the best. That's not the best. And again,
what way to be?
New York
He brought me
Times.
to the depths of despair. Do you want this man?
Yeah, sounds nice to me. Sounds like a good relationship. Pottinger, they talk about implications during this time of Pottinger, still talking about it in 1986. And at this time, what's Pottinger doing? In that case, Hashemi was indicted for attempting to illegally export $500,000 in military gear to Iran. Implicated, but not indicted, was J. Stanley Pottinger, a former high-ranking official in the Justice Department, now living in Mexico.
Always implicated, never indicted.
Yeah,
indicted.
And never about either. Like never about.
He's wearing a big fake Mexican mustache,
He got
a sombrero on. He's laying back. He's got a little chihuahua next to him. The only way you can recognize him,
will notice me here.
you can only recognize it because of how flat and long his chin is. That's all you can recognize. He's like, is that Gloria Steinem? Oh no, it's Stanley Pottinger. I could tell by the way his hair is not straight as hers, because hers is as straight as of hair. So that's and 1989. This is the last one now. We go. We're going to go back. What's he doing? Well, this is the last thing I mentioned about. By 1989, they're asking the question, who is Mr. Pottinger? And if you read the article, they give you this bump. There's nothing there. It's a really small article. And Pottinger and everything he's done is being forgotten in real time.
Not like we had in the previous episode.
Yeah.
We didn't forget Pottinger.
No. Well, they're forgetting him now. And he is about to go into official retirement. In 1990, wow, I'll save that for the next time. But he's going to be very close with Jeffrey Epstein in 1990. And this Pottinger ultimatum will bring us to the third part when that happens. That's very exciting.
And right to Jeffrey.
Yes.
Jeffrey Epstein hasn't really made much of an appearance yet, has he? But it all leads to him.
Oh yes, he's in the distance during the Iran-Contra affair. He's there. Like Hashemi and Khashoggi are in business together, in bed together. Pottinger is Hashemi's guy, fixer, and probably working for the CIA to infiltrate Hashemi at the same time, and is probably trying to convince them all to do the same thing and the right thing anyway. And on the other side is Epstein and Khashoggi, who are doing the same sort of deals in the same sort of areas, working in the same sort of investment banks. And as we'll learn in the next episode, it is during the time where the Iran-Contra scandal is starting, is really around the time where Pottinger later admits he first met Jeffrey Epstein. And there he gives this banal, I worked with him in an investment bank, and we were working for different clients. and I worked with him for a couple of weeks on the same desk, and he gives this really blank feeling about it. But in actual fact, they were both smuggling arms to Iran during that time, and now he's supposed to be the honorable, the savior, the good white knight coming to save the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and he helped build up people like Jeffrey Epstein. And during that period, apparently, he made loads of money investment banking. Well, it actually looks like he made all of his money gun running, and surely there should be questions to where Stanley Pottinger's millions came from.
Indeed.
Wow, that was a marathon.
Yeah,
take us down once again, and we look forward to part 3.
Oh, part 3 is a big one. Well, people, I like this is it. Now we've gone through 2. People who are inside the case, the people who were involved in this, some of the people who will be waiting for part 2, they know what's coming. They know what they have done. They already know their connections. They know exactly who is linked with who and how they're linked with who and all of this.
All that's left is the banter. That's the only thing that they don't know.
Yeah.
Jokes that are going to land.
All they don't know are the bants. Just the bants. That's all
they're making jokes about your ex. It's not about her chin, is it?
I'll be interested.
Know they were going to talk about the chin.
I'll be interested to see how they take it on the chin. I'll be interested to see that. they honestly, these guys. I'm glad you like that. These guys are really. Some of them are really nefarious people who have to. They're going to have to change their story soon. They're going to have to, and it doesn't matter how late. Now it's too late not to change the story, and I think a lot of their supporters have to see, because there's only 1 or 2 people at the moment I can say, and I'm not going to say their names, 1 or 2 people who are involved with Stanley Pottinger's sort of network, his circle, and were involved in what happens in the Jeffrey Epstein case, which to me is just unbelievable. The reason why I wrote these is so that people can quite simply understand how messed up everything is going on. But when I got to the end, I didn't realize how not messed up it was. It was all so organized, so carefully manufactured. It's not messed. They know exactly what
it's like that with everything though. Like your average person's opinions would say like what happened in the COVID era. They'd be like, oh, what a mess, what a shambles. It's like, no, everything that happened was meant to happen. On the surface it just looks like a complete shambolic, no one knows what they're doing, but everything was purposefully orchestrated to happen the way it happened.